Hey everybody. So I don't usually do videos in the morning while I'm having my coffee. I usually like to get dressed and cleaned up first, but I was sitting on my back porch, which I like to do every morning if possible. Have my coffee, listen to the birds. You can probably hear some of them right now, and kind of catching up on comments. There's a video that I did 2 months ago that I didn't realize had kind of taken off a little bit. And I'm still, even though I've been doing this YouTube thing for a while, I'm still kind of new to it and still trying to figure things out. YouTube sent an email or something. I got alerted that, hey, this video is doing pretty well. So I went back and I read through comments, and excuse me, it was the Confessions from My Mormon Mission video. And it was pretty cool going through and reading the comments. And while I was doing that, I was looking at some other videos as well, and just kind of going back through comments. And I definitely noticed a theme that tied everything together. The videos that I do about the Mormon church, me leaving, family that's still in it, raising kids, non-Mormon kids in a Mormon area, those are by far the most watched videos I do. I have some people say, why do you talk about this stuff? Why do you go off on this? You know, if you left the church, why do you still talk about it? I don't know. I think I find it kind of cathartic. I'm gonna get this a little closer just to make sure y'all can hear me. There's people in the parking lot out behind me. I also do it because, I mean, I've said this many times. My main point for doing YouTube, TikTok, is hopefully to spread some good energy, some positivity. I know I've done some subjects that are a little deeper and heavier, and I've also gotten into, Espa, get out of there. My dogs love eating my decorative grass. Drives me crazy. I do try to, even when I'm talking about leaving the church and negative things, I still wanted to have kind of a positive feeling to it, which I know isn't always possible. On TikTok, that's almost all it is. It's just goofy content. I don't try to do anything serious on TikTok. But anyway, I read back on a bunch of comments that I didn't know had come in from some of you, specifically about leaving the church, having family still in the church, raising kids that aren't LDS. There was one lady that said her and her family were active. They raised their kids in a very active LDS home. And yet her kids were always excluded from everything, even in front of her as she taught primary. I've seen the same thing happen. I don't think it's just the Mormon church that is very cliquey. But the Mormon church is very cliquey. Where I grew up, after we moved from Norway, we lived in a little town in southern Alberta. And there were 3 LDS wards in this town of 4,000 or 5,000 people. There were quite a few Mormons in the town. 5 miles from us was an even smaller town. And the people in our town didn't really like the people in that town when it came to the church groups, because a lot of those people in that little tiny town thought they were better. I don't understand where it came from. I never understood it. Apparently it's still going on, because somebody that's close to us has told us about that, and it still goes on. I know some of you are going to just say, well, it's just a cult. That's how cults are. Fine, you get to, have your opinion for sure. But I find it so strange that there are these cliques. Not only, I kind of get it, we raised our kids. This town was better, much better, that we're in now. The town we were in before this was brutal to raise Mormon or non-Mormon kids in. They completely shunned my kids. It wasn't great here either, but it was better. I was talking to one of my sons the other day, and he said it's even worse than you thought it was, because your kids don't tell you everything that happens. I wish they would sometimes. Sorry, I just had something come in. But yeah, you find out things. There are things I've told my dad in my 40s and 50s that he didn't know about when I was 17, 15. So it is essentially cliques that form. When you're really young kids, when your kids are young, they usually form relationships pretty quickly, or they don't. I was really lucky. I grew up in that town that had a lot of LDS people, and most of my friends were Mormon, but I had non-Mormon friends. And it just wasn't even a thing. Nobody thought about it. Nobody said, that kid's not Mormon, you can't hang out with them. Those words never came out of my parents' mouths. I knew one family that was kind of like that. They were extremely strict. Their kids had to wear like dress clothes to school. They could only attend like the most religious of meetings. Like if it was a scouting event or we were going sledding or something like that, they usually weren't allowed to go to that kind of stuff. So it did exist, but it was very rare. We just, my dad was stricter than my mom when it came to church. And he didn't like us playing on Sunday. Espelon! But that got a little slack as we got a little older. And when I say older, I'm talking like 10, 11. I would go with my buddy over to the school and shoot baskets. We would, hang out and just ride bikes or do whatever. Most of the stores in my town back then weren't open on Sunday. There was one store run by this Chinese dude. Actually I think it was his nephew, was a friend of mine. And we loved that store because he was the only one that was open on Sunday. So Christmas Eve I remember one year fell on a Saturday. So Christmas Day was Sunday. And I remember I got a model you put together with glue for Christmas. And I was so excited to build it, and there was no glue with it. So that next day, even though it was Sunday, I think my parents let me, because I was probably only 11 or 12, let me walk down there and get glue because, hey, it's my Christmas present. I couldn't play with it. And I remember he was a very quiet dude, but a nice guy. Man, he ran that store for years and years and years. It's funny when you grow up in a little town, you kind of get to know everybody. Even if you don't personally know them, you know them by recognition. And I can picture all these little stores on Main Street. It was a typical small town Main Street, a few blocks of some kind of old rundown stores. Some of them have been fixed up now, but it kind of looks the same. It's just a few more stores now. And I think it's probably more like 9,000 people live there now, but it's still a small town. And I know I've gotten off topic. I do this a lot. Getting back to the whole Mormon thing. I've said this before. I'm not angry that I grew up Mormon. I don't have regrets that I went on a Mormon mission. Excuse me. Skål. I feel like I had some really good experiences. I grew in maturity a lot with those experiences. I had somebody else say, it's sad when we lose people like you who can tell people how it is. And I just responded and said, I appreciate that. I'm no saint by any means. I'm not afraid to tell people what I think, and I try to do it in a respectful way, but I couldn't go back to church. Even if I decided I was just going to go back just to try to, do whatever I could do, I would feel like a total hypocrite. I don't believe in it. And I don't think it's my place to fix what's ailing with the church. And this is not just me that thinks this. There are a lot of people, a lot of podcasts out there that talk about things that could be better in the Mormon church. And that is, I think, the cornerstone of where to start. Stop telling your kids to not associate with non-LDS kids. It's an awful concept to put into their heads at such a young, vulnerable, extremely pliable age. I'm not comparing it to racism, but kids that grow up with racism ingrained in them, they grow up with racist parents. It's really hard to get that out of people. I have run into very few actual racist people. I know they exist, obviously. We all have some biases, but just outright racism. I had a neighbor when I lived in Denver. He was this old German dude, and this was 35, 40 years ago. So he was old then, he was in his 80s, and he had been a Nazi, like a full-on Nazi in the war. And there were certain groups of people he just hated. He was super nice dude. He always treated me well, and we had good conversations. But the guy was just a full-on racist. And I would try to talk to him. I'm like, Frank, things have changed. It's not like that. And you weren't changing his mind. You just weren't. So like I said, I'm not comparing what happens in the Mormon church to racism. I'm just saying when that is put into your brain at a young age, it is hard to get it out of there. If you watch your dad beat your mom when you're a kid and a little kid, and you think, oh, I guess that's what you do. Hopefully at some point we all mature enough to realize, hey, some of the crap I was taught as a kid is exactly that, crap. And I have to move on from it. I have to be better than whoever I learned that from. And it's the same in the church. If you teach your kids that having non-LDS friends is somehow a bad thing, there's a chance those kids are going to grow up and perpetuate that same stereotype and push that into other people's heads too. So I just wanted to get on and kind of respond to some of that. It was so much fun going back and reading all these comments. I didn't know were there. The last time I looked at that video, I think it had like 1,100 views, and it was over 6,000, which for this humble little channel is pretty cool. Thank you, by the way, for the thumbs up, the subscribing, and the comments. I really dig it. So beautiful. I love the birds. It's getting pretty noisy back there. It's summer vacation. Kids are out playing. So I will call it here, and I got to go get my trailer hooked up for the weekend. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Thanks for watching. Peace. Love.